Hello and welcome to Self Talk. I'm Rachel Astarte. Today I have as a guest on the podcast Debra Lynn. She is an author, a professional singer, a vocal instructor who uses wisdom gleaned from a lifelong spiritual journey to activate the authentic voice, both within and without. Thank you for being on the show, Debra.
Oh, I'm so glad to be with you today, Rachel. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So let's get started. What got you into your field? What was your calling?
Well, the singing aspect of my life started really young. And to some degree, the conflict with my parents was the trigger. At 7. We were in the car driving down to Maryland, and I was obviously singing something not on the radio. And they were like, be quiet. And that message of silence yourself very young sort of caused, excuse me, this kind of constriction to come to my body. And I knew I was going to be a singer. So that was the moment of choice. And then I literally stayed that commitment for a very long time to get there.
Wow.
It took me 30 years from the moment I decided to the moment I was a professional.
Wow. And what was that journey like for you? Where did you train, or how did you train? What kind of music do you like to sing? What did you study?
Well, it's interesting. It's kind of a combo of both the pragmatic and the spiritual, right? The sort of this weaving in and out of the guidance of that. In terms of the pragmatic part, I was inspired by a teacher sort of in my mid-teens. I sang in performance quite young. I was actually active at 11 singing, and recognized that the voice that I had been given was impacting my audience even at the age of 11. Wow. So I just kind of was guided to teachers, but then I faced into enormous disappointment as I was right before going into college. I was in a bad car accident that impacted my face.
Wow.
I still kept driving towards this voice. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to fight anything that happens and try to get to where I'm supposed to go. Mm-hmm. So I had great teachers. A lot of my degree is in voice performance from university. And then again, sort of pressed on with relationship of, no, you can't be a singer. You're not supposed to be a singer. And I was like, well, yes, I'm meant to be a singer. I'm going to be a singer.
So it's a different kind of voice, right?
Yeah, and it was all of it pushing to the release of the singing voice that was manifested for me in Maui. 1997 began my professional career. Mm-hmm. And so I was trained at a high level in bel canto to be a professional singer. Took me a while to get there, got to Maui, became that, and then had like 12 years of this amazing, you are that which you visioned.
Wow. What did that feel like?
The first time I stood on a stage in Maui, I was at there's a theater there called the Arts and Cultural Center, the Castle Theater. It's quite large, 1,200 seats. It has the capacity in that house to be both acoustic and natural, like amplified. You could do it either way. Mm-hmm. And so I was standing on the stage in an unamplified environment with a symphony and a chorus, singing for the first time professionally as a soloist. And I just remember feeling this profound spiritual gratitude moment of, wow, that I kind of landed.
Yeah.
And then it launched from there.
Yeah. What a beautiful, we could spend a half an hour talking about that feeling, right? When you're in alignment with your purpose. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Well, and Maui was profound for me because of the container of love that, if you've been to Maui, you kind of already know what I'm talking about. It's like the aloha that the Hawaiians embody is the frequency of the environment as a whole. And so when you're open to it and you step into it, that love that's coming towards you, that ultimately is coming from within you,
right.
That vibrational field just keeps expanding. So unfortunately, life pulled me back here to the mainland 12 years later. And as I was leaving, the universe gave me one more experience of being in that loving, same house, by the way, same Castle Theater. There were 3 moments in that journey, but the last one was, again, 1,200 people sitting in that house, this time all there basically for myself and a couple of musicians that I was in relationship with at that time. And it was a house full of love.
Wow.
Powerful, powerful journey.
So you began it and ended it in this state of love. Yeah. In the container.
A powerful state of self-love, and a powerful state of feeling that love coming back towards me in reflection. Yeah. Very, very, very cool.
So how did you move from being in the backseat of the car, the parents saying, to having this conviction that, you know, maybe pushed against what society might have expected from you, or certainly your parents had expected from you? I mean, maybe they got in line with it eventually, but what do you think is the part of you that said, keep going?
I have to say that from a very, very early age, I had inner awareness of, we'll call them spiritual experiences. I had prophetic type dreams very young. I connected with spirit very young because I was growing up in an alcoholic, dysfunctional, codependent, really intense, emotionally abusive container. I wasn't physically abused, but there was an enormous amount of emotional pressure. Because of that, I turned inward very, very, very young and started trusting in guidance that was coming to me as early as probably 5, 6, 7. And so whatever I was seeing externally was always secondary to what I was hearing internally. This, in reflection, to have been that young and accessing this, to me, is a miracle.
Yeah, yeah. What sort of guidance were you receiving? What sort of messages were you, I guess message is a good word, were you receiving at such a young age that gave you that strength?
Well,
like why trust that voice and not the outer world voice for you?
Right. Like, how did I actually even get there? You know, the very first message that came through was actually a little bit disturbing. And I talk about it in my new book, In the Divine Mirror. It's sort of a pivotal moment where I had a prophetic dream very, very young of what I would come to feel was an image of Jesus, but at the time didn't really have any kind of way of defining what that masculine presence was. I was in the dream watching little tiny men with knives attacking a human heart. And this presence of the divine sort of standing by, maintaining this sacred space. I walked through that journey, in my own opinion, through my life and the experiences, sort of the little men and the breaking of the heart, the constant kind of like this. So as I sang, as I connected with what was this sort of vibrational love coming through me, it kept sort of, as I sang, and now I kind of understand the neural pathway piece of this, but as I sang, I lifted. As I sang, I felt love. As I sang, I heard God. As I sang, I felt angelic presence. I would say it just kept weaving back and forth, and I'd keep having these sort of negative experiences, and I would weave back internally into that song.
Okay, beautiful.
It was quite beautiful and quite intense.
Yeah. And, you know, to have an image like that, you know, we think about the Sacred Heart of Jesus as well, you know, that this, to have that kind of image at such a young age and not be completely destroyed by it, but rather lifted in one way or another, whether you understood it or not, but then to trust that inner voice or that inner guidance, as to, you know, to pull you along your path is really, really powerful. So, and you talk a little bit about how to balance your spiritual journey how to be in alignment with your highest self. And what does that mean to you, to be in alignment with your highest self?
Well, as we were just finishing and you were just saying, the moment of awareness that came to me that I think led me into that kind of juxtaposition between both was the moment that I made the internal decision that who I was and what I was here for was to give, not to get. And that I was, and it wasn't like a emptying where you have nothing kind of giving. It was kind of the giving that I think you talk about in your writing, where it's more this endless source of energy.
Right.
Well, I was 11. I was 11 when I had that connection, right? So it's like somehow my highest self was connecting with me, and I became aware of it because of the trauma in my life. I turned to that which I could connect, which reflected more of a feeling of peacefulness, if you will.
Yeah.
So that authentic voice internally just kept having more and more strength. And I stopped participating more and more with the external world that felt illusory.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I think and then Maui sort of then brought that home, where I was starting to see, okay, here's what the world is telling me is truth. Here's what I'm feeling is truth. And it just kept balancing more towards what I feel internally as truth.
What were some external truths that were being thrust upon you that you had to come to terms with?
A lot of the self-worth pieces. You're not beautiful. I had 3 marriages, 3, what I will say ultimately were destructive relationships, where I just stepped into my patterning at such a deep level that the person I was with was reflecting sort of the really shadowy, dark elements that I had been sort of in the container of, not thinking I had taken them on, thinking I'd sort of gotten a free pass.
Yep, I'm past this. Yep.
No, right, but no, not so much. It really was that idea that I said to you before we started, this idea of a rosy stem of, the wooden stem of a rose is wood, and this idea that I kept having to push through it. So the reflection would be, low self-worth, you're unattractive, you have no value here. There's nothing important that you have to contribute to the conversation. Your voice doesn't matter.
Right.
Over and over and over again.
Wow.
And I just kept singing.
Yeah. And making your voice literally matter.
That's correct.
And that's exhausting to have to deal with that, all the time, really draining.
No, I would tell you that I have experienced internal fatigue at the level that I didn't think I would survive it. And really and truly only, I know that we're all looking at 2020 and going, oh, how do we, like just the magnitude of what we've all just experienced culturally, right? But for me, 2020, at the start of it, brought me back into my purpose at such a strong level and started having me produce from a place of giving at a level higher than I had been able to. And I think it was because suddenly we were isolated, and all those voices of you have nothing to contribute here they disappeared long enough for me to go, oh, start contributing.
Yeah. That's amazing that you were able to lean on that and trust that voice, but you'd had years of practice, because I'm going to go out on a limb here. It didn't let you down. Right.
That is correct.
And that's something that comes up in the podcasts and in sessions with my patients. How do we know that the authentic voice, or how do we know that the voice inside is authentic? How do we know what's our highest self? And that's a great question. I'd love to hear from you, your perspective on how do we know who our highest self is when we don't really know who we are, you know?
Yeah. Well, I had, like I said, I had great guidance, and I go back to Maui again, in that I was open. I was open to spirit. I was open to experiences. I was open to alternative dimensions. I was open, and sat with a beautiful channel named Dahlia starting in 1998, probably sat with her. It's a personal friend of mine, my Reiki master, for about 200 sessions over a period of 8 years. And for me, it's very simple, that we have the container of fear and we have the container of love. And if in any given moment we are resonating within the container of fear, we are out of alignment with our authentic self.
Right.
And as soon as we come back into the container of love, which will feel much more self-nurturing, much more peaceful, much more joyful, much more hopeful. All of the positive, what we'll consider positive, higher frequency attributes will all show up when we're in authenticity.
Yeah. So I completely agree with that assessment. And here's something that happens when you have a voice, or the voice in your head is telling you of your unworthiness and your ugliness, and you have no purpose. And and you're looking, okay, container of fear, container of love. I feel better in the love container. I feel like, oh, all of a sudden I can breathe. My chest opens, and then the voice goes, well, you're just deluding yourself. You're not, that's just woo-woo stuff. Right. How do you deal with that? I mean, you personally.
Well, I
I already trust the voices, but.
Well, I do, but, it's not that I don't move, because it's sort of this, figure 8 motion, right?
Yeah.
Of we go into alignment, out of alignment, into alignment. The contrast teaches us how to more and more move into that container. For me, I do have practices. I like daily, and it's become even more so since COVID started, where I will, meditation was never easy for me. My brain wouldn't stop long enough to feel like I was getting anywhere with meditation. But I learned to just do a breathing practice. I think from Eckhart Tolle and we have lots of wise teachers that help with this. But I started to wake up early. I started to do a little bit of a breathing practice to get myself into a quieter space to start my day. I tend to be open to information from the universe. So I listen. When I meet people, when I see someone, when someone smiles at me, when I say hello and they say hello back, or, I'm listening to the universe all day long. Open. So I'm receptive.
Yep, you're open, and the channels are open.
Correct. Right? So the negative beliefs, or the beliefs that say, you're delusional. I've certainly, I've got lots of those loud voices.
We all have.
Right? Yeah. Experience. But I think ultimately, first of all, for me, it's the authentic voice within myself. I also, when I'm with someone else, I hear and see and feel and believe in the authentic presence and center of the person I'm with. So I have been blessed as a vocalist and as a voice instructor now as well, to resonate with the beauty of the diamond within every single human being I meet, no matter how they're thrashing about.
Yeah, sure.
And I feel like that helps me see it in myself.
Okay.
When I start thrashing.
Right. Well, I mean, isn't that what it's all about? I mean, that's Jungian shadow work in a nutshell right there. When you're looking at something that upsets you about someone else, you have to recognize, oh, I have that quality as well. Aren't we all connected in some way or another? And we all are. This is the human experience. When you work with, as a vocal coach, how does spirit play into that work? So here you are with a Verdi aria or whatever it is that you're and how do you work with someone? Do you incorporate spirit into the work? Is it technical? Is it both? How does it work?
Yeah, it's both. Now, what's interesting is that, again, as we are in the middle of this paradigm shifting reality, the work I do is paradigm shifting. So I was very blessed in my journey to find this bel canto teacher. He was my last teacher. Mm-hmm. What did he do? Well, he was my Olympic coach to profession. I got to my professional career after 10,000 hours of practicing these mechanics, got there. Mm-hmm. But what I didn't realize is that what he was giving me and what I got from learning how to be this high-level singer were the tools that were going to help me help others. Mm. And my body functions completely differently than any other singer I know. Mm. And I'm constantly in a container of going, okay, this is how this mechanic works. This is we think air moves through us and we make sound. For example, it's just a little example. Okay, so what if we just become a cello? What if we just become an open instrument? What if everything important that we're doing is internal? Now it's spiritual. There isn't anything but what's within. And we control the mechanism from within with no outward focus and with no outward movement. Mm-hmm. It changes the entire world of the singer. So, but the spiritual side for me with people is that I already know everyone can do it. So no matter what.
Just going to ask you that question. You read my mind. Like, can everyone, could you teach anyone to sing?
Anyone. And I dare say within 30 minutes.
Love it.
If I can open the mind to a possibility and help someone feel something, I can change their life.
Wow.
So and potentially I'm one of the only people on the planet right now that's body's functioning like a singer from 1800 who at that time would be singing very differently than the singers we hear today.
Okay. What's the main difference between the two?
Bel canto was the fundamental Italian understanding of singing.
Right.
And the Italians understand something profound that we haven't, in my experience, embodied within the container of the United States, unless you've gotten very lucky and you've got a teacher that gets this, that the Italians basically hold the air back. Mm. And in any situation that I'm functioning where I'm meeting singers that have been trained or that are struggling or that have, their idea is that they're supposed to breathe in and move the air out. And as soon as you go past this little gate, the vocal folds that are a half an inch long and a fingernail's width wide, and this membrane that's controlling basically air pressure, as soon as we realize that we all do the mechanics I understand every single day when we walk around and we're breathing involuntarily and we don't have any consciousness of air movement.
Wow. Wow.
That's the mechanics I sit on. Mm-hmm. So it's profound because for me, it is a continuation of my spiritual work. Mm-hmm. If I can empower someone to whether it's singing and speaking, whether it's just for the first time they are willing to be heard in the world. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It activates something else about their purpose and the way that they are meant to be here, whether they're singers or not.
Yeah. And literally and figuratively having a voice in the world. Yeah. Correct. And working with the throat chakra and this is creativity and our life breath comes from here. Yeah. That's such a beautiful focus.
And it's so delicate and so gentle and so easy to get the mechanism to cooperate. Mm. When we take the struggle out, it's just there.
Mm. So is it a difficult thing to learn?
It's interesting. For some it is if they're very entrenched in their ideas of this is how it works, even if it's not working for them.
Interesting.
Right? Which of course, that's the struggle when we're resistant to the idea that maybe we don't know, right? But if someone, and lately more and more people who are drawn to me are so open and receptive that all I have to do is show them how it feels once and they can repeat the behavior.
Wow. Fantastic.
It is. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. So I wonder if, and I would love to keep talking about this forever. We'll get back to it. I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your book, Divine Mirror.
Yes. So So I pulled I just got some of the hard copies here that
Oh, wow.
I know I published, this is my singing book. So the Bel Canto Buzz was my first book, paperback 2012, on singing. But this was my, because the spiritual journey has been part of my life for so long, right? And I kept my internal walk very, very close and very private. I'm now 59. I started writing Divine Mirror about 8 years ago and finished it this year. And it's part of the reason it stayed unfinished is because it's telling this journey with a small painting that my alcoholic father gifted me when I chose to heal with my alcoholic father. So there was a gift given in exchange for me coming to awareness that compassion and forgiveness and love and understanding of the traumas of his life, as soon as I could do that, here comes a gift. The gift turns out to be a 400-year-old painting with a hidden painting under it.
Wow.
That I've been researching for 10 years.
Jeez.
So Divine Mirror is the story of that research.
Okay.
It's also the story of the transformational healing journey with both of my parents, because it was a team effort in codependency.
Yes, it is. Indeed. Yeah.
And then the connection of spirit through my own spiritual experiences through my life that kept me focused on being aware of clues and mysteries, but also if we've had any kind of experience with past life consciousness, and we're open to that idea that maybe we're experiencing 7 generations of memories going back. Sure. This idea, okay, the painting would be 7 generations back for me. And so then a part of this is the channeled experiences that came through me as a result of me trying to decipher the history of what had happened. So you get this sort of 3-in-1 kind of.
Wow. It's fascinating. Fascinating.
It's a beautiful, for me, it's a beautiful transformational journey, and that the message is universal, that love is possible no matter how dark, no matter how bad, no matter what we're facing, is possible.
I think that is a beautiful thought to end our interview with, but I wanted to ask you, how can people reach you? Are you taking students, or where are you?
Sort of 3 ways. First of all, anyone is welcome to email me that if they, they're curious about any aspect of this, they feel free to email me. I'm at this point, yes, I get busy, but I still love to connect. And that would be debralynn.author@gmail.com. That will take people to me. Okay. But I'm Amazon.com. Has both of my books. The Bel Canto Buzz, Beautiful Singing Made Simple, was my first book. And it really is user-friendly, and it walks someone through why we have so much trouble as Americans to sing. And it has nothing to do with what we were born with or our DNA. It has to do with the language we speak. So it takes our brain out of feeling like I didn't get that gift to no, everyone has the capacity. We just need to understand a couple things structurally. And then the Divine Mirror is available through Amazon. Then the other way is YouTube channel, which was my big COVID breakthrough. If folks go to my channel, Debra Lynn Bel Canto, all one word, they'll find 2 things that might be helpful to them in these times. One is there's a series I created called The Magic of You, which will walk anyone through these mechanics and let them sort of just in the privacy of their own home, kind of like, because they're going to be terrified initially, especially if they think they can't sing, right?
Right.
Then there's also performances on there, and various things that people can dig, but there's performances of me singing on Maui. I just put one up that's a historic one that I feel like maybe will help people lift their hearts in these times, to hear the sound. And it's just the beauty of life, even though overshadowed at times, is still the beauty of life. Yeah.
So that's Debra Lynn Bel Canto, BELCANTO.
That's right.
And on YouTube, and they can find you. And it's LYNN. I will post this in our notes so people can have the links and the information there too.
That's awesome. Thank you so
I
much.
wanted to say thank you. This has been incredible, and I love your journey, and I'm so glad that it's continuing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Rachel. And thanks for this connection, the heart connection. You know, I mentioned I love your rose glasses. I do. I think that we all are roses. We are all roses in various stages of blooming. And it's such a beautiful time in life to see transformation in action.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much, Debra.